Yo, what's going on, guys? It's your boy Lucas, and today I have another story that will leave you completely speechless on how fucking stupid I truly am. So, with that being said, start rolling up and get comfy because this is a story you're not going to want to miss. So, let's get right into it. So, a quick backstory, this takes place about a year after I graduated high school in the summer of 2019. And at this point, I'm 19 and have been living by myself in my very first apartment for only a few months. Now, this was a high end apartment, but it was located in like a pretty rough neighborhood. So, anytime I'd step outside, I was getting myself into some type of trouble. But anyway, since I was the first one of my friends to get their own crib, it was basically implied that everyone would always come over to my place every time we linked up. So, with that out the way, this all started one early Saturday morning with me and my boy Noel waking up in my apartment absolutely blasted from the night before. Now, I don't know about y'all, but my favorite way to cure a hangover is with a fat ass blunt. But unfortunately, we had woken up and had already smoked all of the weed the night prior. So, of course, I'm calling up this random plug who I had only met a few days before through like a friend of a friend at the club. But I didn't even know the dude's name and he didn't know mine. So we were just complete strangers essentially. But anyway, it's like 9 o'clock in the morning and I hit him up for like an ounce of weed and I tell him to pull up to my apartment. And sure enough, he does just that. So while Noel is still sleeping, I go downstairs to this dude's car to buy the ounce. So I hop in the passenger seat and I pull out the money and I look over and I shit you not, this like 6'4", 250-pound drug dealer is reaching into the back seat and is pulling out a duffel bag, then like two normal backpacks just filled to the top with weed, and he's asking me to pick out what flavor I wanted and everything. Now, this is probably the most weed I've laid my eyes on at this point in my life, so I'm sitting there completely speechless. But sure enough, I just picked out what I wanted and I handed dude the cash and just got out and went back up to my apartment like clockwork. So I immediately get back and I tell Noel that this dude is riding around with like a stupid amount of really high quality weed. Now, don't get me wrong, my boy Noel is a pretty big guy, but I'm not. I'm like 5'10", maybe 130 pounds at the time. And like I said, this plug was like 6'4", 250, so he was a really big dude compared to me, but he was about the same size as Noel. Anyway, the second I told Noel how much weed this guy had, he immediately starts scheming up a plan of how we're gonna rob him like fucking Lester planning a heist. And it's important to understand that I've never robbed anyone at this point, but Noel has. So most of the day passes by and all we were doing is just thinking of ways we can get that weed. We thought of just about any plan you could imagine. One of the bright ideas we imagined was for one of us to create a diversion to distract him while the other sneaks into the car and grabs as much weed as you can and then just run for it. Spoiler, it gets way bloodier than that. But anywho, at this point, it starts getting dark outside, so it's time to act. So I grab my phone and I call him up and ask him to pull up to my apartment and deliver us a pound of weed this time. And my thinking was that since I had previously purchased some zips off him in the past, he'd feel comfortable selling me a decent amount this time. And sure enough, this dude pulls up in his fucking pajamas with just as much weed as he had earlier in the day. So, like any jack boy, we snorted some lines of Adderall and started walking downstairs to his car. But obviously, since I knew the guy, I got into the passenger seat right next to him while Noel sat in the back seat, and he had brought his own backpack with us. So I'm casually just shooting the shit with him, trying to remain as calm and collected as I could so he wouldn't get suspicious while he's weighing out these pounds that we asked for. And the way he's weighing it is he had the scale on the center console and would fill up like a bag that was like 2 or 3 ounces. Then he'd hand it straight to me, and then I was discreetly passing it back to Noel, who is then putting it directly into his backpack. And y'all gotta realize this dude was so comfortable with us that he didn't even ask to see any cash up front or anything, which is a big fuck up on his behalf. But so he's handing me all these bags of weed and I'm handing them back to Noel. And eventually, when he's done weighing everything out, he then asks for the money, and that's when shit just got crazy. So the second he asked for the money, Noel grabs like the headrest of his car where his head was with one hand, and then with the other just starts beating the shit out of this dude. So I instantly start hitting him too. So he's essentially getting hit from every direction you can imagine while just sitting there. And our goal was to just keep hitting him until he went unconscious. But as I stated before, this dude's built like a linebacker, so he's just eating everything we're throwing at him, and he just would not go unconscious. And don't get me wrong, I truly felt really bad because for at least a minute, he was just getting fucked up, and I was just really hoping he'd go to sleep quickly so we could stop hurting him, but he just wouldn't. So at this point, he's screaming bloody murder at the top of his lungs, and we're in a car in the middle of a highly populated parking lot at my apartment. So I say, fuck it, he's not going to get knocked out. So I started grabbing all the bags of weed, which was located between his legs, and I'm pulling at it, and he crosses his legs like he was making it really hard, but he's still getting fucked up by Noel, and he ends up slipping out of the fucking car and gets outside on like the driver's side. So we're both scrambling to get his ass back in the car because now it's completely out of control and super hot. Like, this is considered strong-armed robbery. So I got out on the passenger side and I had to like run around the car to get to him. But since Noel was in the back seat, he was able to get out on the same side as this drug dealer did. So by the time I got around the car, the dude and Noel are straight up like boxing each other. But as soon as I turned the corner and he looked away from Noel and looked at me, that's when Noel landed a clean cut to his jaw and the dude just immediately went to sleep. Now, imagine all the blood and weed that got spilled all over the ground and in this dude's car when he got out. So the car and all of his doors are open, the car's still running, and it just looked like a murder scene. But we grabbed all the weed and we started running back into my apartment. And as we're running, I'm like laughing and I'm blocking this dude's number and everything, obviously. But after a few minutes, I went back down to the parking lot to see if homie was still laid out there. And sure enough, dude was gone. All the weed on the ground gone. There's still blood everywhere, but that was it. Now, I'm not an asshole, and I do feel extremely bad for beating this dude up as bad as we did, but he knew what he was signing himself up for when he wanted to start dealing drugs, and he shouldn't have had his whole stash on him, and he should have had a gun 100%, but either way, what happened was wrong, and I'd never do it again. But as far as the story goes, I never heard from the dude ever again, so I hope he's okay, and he's doing better than he was that night he encountered us. And if you can take anything out of this story, if you're going to sell weed, make sure to always have protection on yourself and to not trust a soul, because like I said, I'm just a little skinny white boy. This dude was some black giant drug dealer, probably in a gang, and I doubt he ever thought two little white boys were going to run up and steal everything he had. But so essentially we stole like a couple 100 grams of weed, and then we split it in the middle. And I mean, it was easily like $2,000 worth of weed at least, and we just got it completely for free. And like I said, the dude never hit me up or anything after. Never saw him again. Nobody ever threatened us or anything. So I mean, yeah, essentially we just beat the fuck out of some drug dealer in his car and stole all of his weed. So that's about that. I mean, it's a story that you would have to experience in person to understand how crazy it was. But I mean, there was just blood and shit everywhere, and I'm not much of a fighter, so I definitely felt really bad after, but the weed was really good, and I mean, it was just an insane story. So if you guys enjoyed listening to this, please make sure to drop a like, comment, and subscribe, as it helps my channel out significantly. And with that being said, I'll catch you guys in the next story. Peace.